this, and to basically work with students who are going to study abroad. I speak to you as a former international student and a psychologist counselor who works with a lot of students who are either racialized or international, and students who come here on exchange, and as well as students who go from Queens to other universities on exchange. So it's my pleasure to be a part of this. I would say in terms of planning to go abroad, it must be so exciting. And this is probably the last thing that you have on your mind, you know, focusing on health and wellness abroad, because I'm sure your focus has been on which university to pick, what program, what are the special features of that place. But this is really important as well. And so we're going to talk a little bit about just wellness in general. And unfortunately, my screen has frozen again. So I'm just give me a sec. Okay. All right, hopefully it works now. Yeah. And I guess, you know, obviously we also have to just acknowledge the COVID-19 impacts that are affecting students' plans. People are wondering whether to apply or not to apply, what will be happening next year. So it is definitely a time of uncertainty, some anxiety, some frustration that things are more complex than usual. But I'll tell you, the International Programs Office has been working really hard on this and have been planning for giving you the best exchange experience possible. So the exchange program has resumed. I understand there are Queen's students on exchange and things are going well for them. Even if things get uncertain, I think we can definitely plan because, you know, I think things are definitely going to improve. So basically, the goals for this session are to give you just a heads up on some common issues and adjustments that need to be made when studying abroad. As I said earlier, this is probably not what you've been focusing on, but it is helpful to do that. So we're going to focus on how to have a more successful transition experience and give you some tips on health and wellness while you're on exchange, and introduce you to some resources that will be available to you while you're on exchange, as well as while you're planning this exchange. So obviously, I don't need to say this, studying abroad on exchange is an amazing experience. It provides you many wonderful opportunities. Many people have come to Queens for our very strong exchange program, and I know you've been looking forward to this component of your studies. But at the same time, we know that going on exchange is also a time of challenge because in general, transition or change can be challenging and sometimes even daunting. And that's because change requires adaptation. And so that's where it can be a bit stressful. Even the most positive things in life, because they involve change, can be stressful. So, you know, getting married to your partner or, you know, going on that absolute wonderful trip you've planned because of the change that it presents requires adjustment. So when you're studying abroad, in addition to the regular change, there is that added layer of a cross-cultural adjustment that needs to be made depending on where you're going, which university, where it's located, etc. So as I said, change requires adaptation and flexibility of coping. You've probably heard of people talking about culture shock, that when you go into a culture that is different from yours, there is that element of culture shock that people go through. This is just a quick infographic just to give you, and I'm sure you know this already, but basically when we go to a new place, it's exciting. We've been planning, we're looking forward to it. And there's that excitement of the novelty of the experience, you know, finally being where we want to be. That is very exciting. But as we kind of work through the process of adjusting, adapting, figuring things out, basic things like phone cards, you know, where do you get certain foods? How do you find housing? What does the academic culture look like in this particular university? So as you're adapting to that, the stresses increase. And so there is that sort of downward slope that people enter. And then typically as we adapt and adjust, we pull out of it and we have a wonderful experience. Occasionally, we can get stuck in that number 3 phase. And if that happens, then please know that there are lots of people here to support you and to get you moving to stage 5. Okay, so what are some of the adjustments and challenges? Perhaps you've given this some thought, so this may be a recap for you. But obviously, the first one is adapting to a new environment. Every place is different, and so there's that adaptation. Creating those new social relationships. You're leaving your circle of friends, and some of you may be lucky that you may know someone else who's going on exchange to that university from Queens. But for a lot of people, it would be about establishing those new social relationships, trying to fit in, to build community in that university. And that can be a little bit of a stressor that requires flexibility and adaptation. This is definitely for some students more independent living. So yes, you've been living on your own while during your undergrad studies or your graduate studies, but you will now be further away from your usual sources of support, so more independent living. And balancing that socializing and working. I know a lot of exchange students have picked countries to go to, our universities to go to, in countries where they want to be able to travel around in that geographical region. And so socializing, traveling, exploration, discovery is a big part of that experience. But obviously you have to balance it with the academic work that you are basically going to be doing while on exchange. Managing money, students tell me there's never enough money when you're studying abroad. So again, kind of planning on that, that's an adjustment. There's definitely adjustments, as I mentioned, to the new academic culture and environment, because every university has its distinct academic culture. Every country has its distinct academic culture. So there is generally, students tell us, there's a change in academic expectations, the workload, whether you're hit with multiple deadlines, multiple assessments, or whether it's the kind of university that just does one big assessment at the end. How do you manage your time? The grade system can be different, and if you're not used to the grades, it could, if you're not happy with it, it can cause some doubts and loss of confidence. For a lot of people, you're kind of looking at the name of a course, reading the small description, and then when you're actually in it, it may be kind of different from what you expected. And sometimes students feel that they don't have the foundational skills that are required for that particular course. So that's an adjustment that needs to be made to be able to establish those skills. And then for some students, it's definitely managing their parents' expectations, because parents are putting in a lot to support your exchange. And so they have certain expectations for that. Okay, social and relationship issues. I've already alluded to this, finding that new social group, fitting in. There can be different rules and practices around alcohol and drugs, and again, sort of adjusting to whatever your norms are and what the local norms are. Being away from friends. This is not something we think of, but it's only when we're away from close friends that we appreciate how much we rely on them. And so that's an adjustment. Depending on where you'll be living, whether it's in a residence abroad or with different housemates abroad, again, adjusting to those folks. And then for people who are in relationships, you may be away from your loved one, or you may end up establishing a relationship with someone at the school where you're on exchange and navigating that. So those are all things that require adjustment. Students often tell us that they can, despite the fact that this is such an exciting endeavor, it's something you've been planning for, it can at the same time affect your mood somewhat due to things like homesickness. Some people can feel initially a bit lonely as you're trying to establish that circle of friends. that culture shock I spoke of. People sometimes say that they're exhausted trying to navigate all the different demands on their time. And if you're doing a lot of traveling on weekends and being away from those usual sources of support, we don't realize how much we rely on them until we're away from them. So all these things can sometimes trigger pre-existing mental health issues. So if any of you have current mental health issues, or you've had pre-existing mental health issues which are not currently impacting you, sometimes that change of moving away, adjusting cross-culturally into a new environment with different supports and different social circles can trigger pre-existing mental health issues. So our aim is not to alarm you. It's really about planning, right? So don't worry too much about it, because a lot of what I've described are what we call the normal ups and downs of adapting to a new environment, to a new sort of living situation. And it is a natural part of transition. And the vast majority of our students have very positive experiences. And as I've mentioned briefly before, there are many people here, many support services and resources to help you, manage whatever it is that might crop up. Okay, so now I just want to focus on some tips for health and wellness, which students have shared with us. And this is also based on my own personal experience and my own clinical experience working with students. So the first thing is have those realistic expectations. Expect some definitely ups, but also some downs. This is totally normal. So don't go in expecting everything to be wonderful all the time, because that's simply not realistic. So there will be some downs amongst those ups. And some key times of stress to be more mindful of is obviously the beginning of your program, so the start of term. The first time you get some sort of graded assignment or essay or test results back, or a lab report back, around midterms and final exams. So those could be some times where you might feel a little bit more stressed. And definitely those special events, right? Your birthday or family events, parents' anniversary or a sibling's birthday or best friend's birthday. So those kind of special times we miss being in our current spaces. Okay, so the first thing, and I know that a lot of you have started doing this already, definitely research those potential exchange universities that you're considering. See what programs they have, what's available, and in particular, know what resources they have for health and wellness. And in our experience, it really varies, right? So it depends on which country you're going to, what their mental health awareness is, what sort of programs they have. I know that quite a few of the exchange students who come to Queens from other countries, a lot of them are just amazed, believe it or not, as how much Queens offers. And our counseling services are heavily used by some of the students because it's an opportunity for them to work on things. So that kind of leads me to believe that maybe their universities have fewer resources than we do at Queens. So research what's available, okay? And do what we call an inventory of your needs. Like, as a person, what is it that you need to thrive, to feel safe, comfortable, well, more goal-directed, and so on. So figure out what's most important to you and make like a list of things that are your list of needs that you want to make sure that will be addressed. And see if these align with the university. So, is it a good fit for you? And do they offer the kinds of things that you will need or may need in terms of support when you're at that university? So see if these align. If you have accommodations at Queens, then make sure that you make some arrangements ahead of time so that we can give you documentation for that new university. And of course, this is Haley, you'll speak to that. but just making sure that actually these things are available at those universities. And if you are using a lot of mental health support, which of course we encourage, just making sure that the universities that you picked have those kinds of services. I also want to just kind of speak to, if we were doing this in person, you'd be in the room and we would have more active questions and answers. But in the Zoom format, I just want to speak to students who hold what I would call more complex social identities. So I'm talking about students who identify as queer or trans, or students who are people of color, so whether you're Black, Indigenous, or any other person of color. If you have special accessibility needs, if you are, again, socioeconomic issues, depending on, what your needs are, just kind of, just to speak to those students. Again, it's even more important to research those potential universities in terms of where are they situated, right? Getting a sense of the culture, the value system in that city, that country, that university. So to make sure that it would be a welcoming environment, a competent, culturally competent environment. So again, doing some more research and making sure that what the university stands for and so on, but that it aligns with your values, your needs, and so that you are affirmed and you thrive in that place. So again, also research those universities in terms of not just their supports, but also opportunities for building community, connecting with people. Okay. So what helps during exchange? The first is definitely adopt what we call a curious and growth mindset. Often we've had calls from students saying, oh, this is so different, and the food is so different, and the classroom lecture style is so different, and socially things are different. Obviously, if you want your current sort of spaces to be reproduce where you're going, like that's not going to happen. And then what's the point of going on exchange, right? So when you encounter this new culture, adopt that curious mindset, that growth mindset, learning more, and if there are issues and problems that you may encounter, it's an opportunity for you to grow as an individual and become that more global citizen. So definitely having that growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset where you're saying it's got to be this way and no other way. It's much more helpful to have that growth mindset. Having what we call radical acceptance. So acceptance here doesn't mean you have to like what you encounter, or it just means that it is what it is. And once you accept that and you don't fight it, what I mean by that is not that you shouldn't be standing up for yourself or asserting what you need, but a lot of us get stuck in, geez, I planned this and this is what I needed, this is what I wanted, and it's just not that, and we can be stuck in that stage. So sometimes, just pulling out of that and saying, yeah, it's different from what I expected, but, I'm going to make the best of this. So with that, you can move forwards and really enjoy that experience. Also, acceptance for yourself. If you're having difficulties, be compassionate with yourself. Don't judge yourself for having those. The number of times when students have called us from exchange and then they're apologizing because they are upset or they're having issues, I'm like, don't apologize. We're here for you. So be compassionate with yourself and engage in problem solving. So if things aren't exactly as you want them to be, who can you talk to? What can you arrange? How can you sort these issues out? So having that kind of mindset really helps when you're studying abroad. Be really active in connecting with domestic students at the exchange university. I know that students who come on exchange here to Queens have told us sometimes that domestic students seem kind of indifferent and don't often engage with them. I know that we have newts and so on who are very international minded, but the majority of students at Queen's have been perceived by exchange students as being a bit indifferent towards them. And that seems to be the case universally. Like we've heard from exchange students who've come back saying that, geez, the local students didn't seem that engaged with them. So that is why we say you should make the effort, take the initiative, connect with people. Because if you introduce yourself, you ask what's going on, how you can join in, you're going to have a more positive exchange experience. So don't wait for people to approach you. Instead, approach them and connect with domestic students at that university. Join clubs and activities. There's lots of amazing opportunities in all these different universities for joining stage productions, choirs, sports events, travel events. So connect, because that's how we build community. We are around people and we foster connections through that, and we gain community. Okay, definitely when you first go to a new place and it's a little bit daunting, keeping busy really helps, because it gives you something to do so your mind doesn't go to those dark places. Instead, it's actively engaged with your present life. Structure your day. This is something that we as a society have really lost. Our days, our lives are very unstructured in terms of when we eat, sleep, do physical activity, do our academic work, etc., work and so on. So structure that day, plan a daily routine for both your waking hours and routines for sleep, when you're going to eat, etc. Because if you don't hydrate, if you don't give yourself nutrition, regular nutrition, regularly spaced nutrition, if you don't get adequate sleep, it's harder to regulate emotion and it's harder to manage stress. So attend to self-care, make sure you're doing some good things for yourself and you're looking after all the things I've just mentioned, that you're engaging in exercise and physical activity. We have a lot of evidence now from many studies that has shown us that physical activity and exercise mitigate the impacts of stress. They're also amazing in terms of reducing anxiety and low mood and depression. So make sure you engage in that safely wherever you will be on exchange. Okay. Now, although you are wanting to obviously go abroad, and that's what your main focus is, it still helps to be connected with people back home, so your family, but don't spend all your time talking to them because you're there to experience new things. Stay connected with your peers because it's a lot easier when you come back to kind of just slip into those relationships when you've maintained some contact while you're away. Stay connected with your own culture too. I know you're going to discover a new culture. That's what your purpose is, but it really helps to have your own cultural comfort zones as well. So make sure that you do kind of remain in touch with things. And if there's fellow students from Queens or Canada, connecting with them will be really nice. Those are moments when you don't have to translate things, you don't have to explain things, they know your reference points, and it can be just a really good break. Stay connected with resources. There's lots of resources available to you online and through our various websites. There's online counseling, etc., that I'll talk about in a minute. Okay. Now, if you think you're struggling, again, it's nothing to feel bad about. First of all, remember that some struggles are normal transition issues and they will pass. Things usually do get better. So keep those lines of communication open. In my experience, Haley and her team are so responsive to their exchange students. Whenever they reach out to the International Programs Office, there's immediate action, and Haley and her team sort of reach out to all the resources on campus, consulting with us, as well as to what advice we have for our students who are out on exchange. So keep those lines of communication open because it can be really helpful. Seek help early. Prevention, early intervention helps. Don't leave it until things have really blown up into a bigger issue, but if you are noticing a consistency in, let's say, low mood, or you're feeling really anxious or unhappy about things, then talk to the team and we can work on prevention and early intervention. And again, to underscore this, engage in those extracurricular activities. So if you're struggling, get more active, join a sports team, drama. All these kinds of activities help to build community. And that makes us less isolated, less lonely, and generally has a positive impact on our wellness. So in terms of resources, of course, student wellness is available to you for pre-departure counseling. If you're seeing a counselor here these days, this is something that you might want to discuss with them and arrive at a plan on how you're going to, what are some of the things that you can do to have that better transition. So talk to your existing counselors or other mental health professionals that you might be seeing. If you're not, you can book an appointment and say, look, I'm concerned about this, this, and this. And then they can help you develop a plan for your wellness. Health promotions can do that as well for more physical health-based things and general wellness. We also have something called Therapist Assist Online, which is available to all students. So we pay for this service. It's an online service with lots of amazing self-help materials that you can check out. There's 8-week modules that you can do for a variety of issues like managing anxiety or low mood or relationship issues, etc., to name a few things. One of the issues with counseling at Queen's, if you're abroad, is that our license is to practice because we're registered health professionals, and our licenses are unfortunately restricted to certain geographical areas. So as a registered psychologist, I'm only allowed to practice in the province of Ontario. So when my clients leave Ontario to another Canadian province or go abroad, I am not legally allowed to provide counseling. Occasionally, we do what we call consultations. So we will, meet with you, consult with you, but we cannot provide regular counseling. And that's why the AMS and the SGPS and Student Wellness have collaborated to enroll with an online counseling service called Empower Me. They can operate anywhere and they're licensed to do online distant counseling. They can sometimes even provide counseling in different languages, so if that's of interest to you. You can also contact Student Wellness and we can help set you up with an Empower Me counselor. So that is who you would contact if, if you do need more intensive counseling when you're on exchange. If you have a good connection with your family doctor or you have a mental health professional that you were seeing in your home community, again, I would say keep in touch with them because some of them may be licensed to practice outside of their jurisdiction. And again, different health professions have different standards and rules around this. So again, the whole idea behind this is for you to plan for what your needs will be when you're going abroad and making sure that should you need support and help, you know exactly what to do and where to turn. So of course, student academic success services are again services that you could talk to. There's the International Center, they have advisors and so on, and a lot of resources that you can access. There's the Yellow House for QT BIPOC students that, again, have some advisors and can consult with you. the Office of the Chaplain as well. So these are some of the resources that we have for you, but your biggest resource is the International Programs Office, because they work very closely with the rest of us to be able to discuss, what you might need, and to give you some advice around these issues, which also include your health and wellness abroad. Okay. I think that's all from me for now.
Thank you so much, Arunima. I'll just add as well, I see Christina is here, not putting you on the spot by any means, Christina, but Christina works in the Faculty of Law and is the Faculty of Law's Exchange Coordinator. And so each faculty office will have their own exchange coordinator. So you can certainly reach out to the International Programs Office, which is more of a central unit, and we can help you find your faculty expert on exchange if you have more specific questions about what partners might offer some of the services that Arunima was speaking about. And just again, before I end the recording, a huge thanks to Arunima for coming out today and speaking about this really important issue. We appreciate it very much. So now
we always think we're like the wet blanket that descends on a wonderful exchange orientation, but it's so important.
So important. We're so grateful. Thank you so much. So I'll end the recording, but we can hang around in case there are any questions. So let me stop that.